1, 2, 3, 4. Welcome to Crazy Chester. Welcome to Crazy Chester. Crazy Chester's Radio Hour. Welcome to Crazy Chester. Welcome to Crazy Chester. Crazy Chester's Radio Hour. Yeah, Crazy Chester's Radio Hour. Crazy Chester's Radio Hour.
Welcome to the Crazy Chester Radio Hour. My name is Andreas Werner. I'm a record producer, songwriter, and owner of Crazy Chester Records. The theme song you just heard is performed by Wet Willie's Jimmy Hall and Funky Chester. The Crazy Chester Radio Hour is a weekly music talk podcast featuring an eclectic group of guests with musical hearts, minds, and souls. And many of the episodes will dive deep into the rich history of music mecca Muscle Shoals. My guest today is Billy Swan. Billy is an artist, musician, songwriter, and producer whose musical fingerprints are all over the musical map, including some of the most influential records ever made. His record of I Can Help was a big hit for Billy in 1974 and was later recorded by Elvis Presley, Jerry Lee Lewis, and many others. He's also produced Tony Joe White's Polk Salad Annie and has played in Kris Kristofferson's band for many years. I met Billy a few years ago through Buzz Cason, and he's become a good friend of mine. Billy, welcome to the Crazy Chester Radio Hour.
Well, thank you very much. It's good to be here.
Thank you so much for being my guest and taking your time and spending the next hour tracing back your career in music. And you were born in Missouri.
In Missouri, yes, Cape Girardeau, Missouri. It's right there before you go into the Boot Heel, actually. Yeah. And it's right on the river, right on the Mississippi. And I was born in a house on Mill Hill, which looks down at the river. And then we moved to Water Street, and that was about a block from the river, too. And that's where we lived there till I was about 10. And then we moved to North Spanish Street, I think it was.
What are some of your earliest memories of music in your life?
It would be Gene Autry, Hank Williams. I liked a lot of the I liked all kinds of music then. I didn't grow up around that much blues, or anything like that. It was basically what I heard on the radio. And my uncle played saxophone in a band, a dance band, Don McNeely's band, actually. And the music I heard would just be whatever was popular at the time, but I liked Gene Autry a lot. And Hank Williams, I liked him a lot. And Lefty Verzell, Johnny and Jack, Farron Young, him, a lot of the country singers. And then the Bill Haley, he got big, and then I really dug that. And then the Sun Records stuff, and that was it for me, that stuff.
So you had a musical family then
just my uncle, I guess I'm the only one that's had gotten into music or played any music in my family.
But as a child, you got to learn quite a few instruments at an early age.
No, not really. I didn't. The only thing I'd go to my cousin's house, and this is later on than what we're talking about now, and I learned to do this thing, the whole lot of shaking thing that doonga 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 doonga. And every time I go to my cousin's house, I drive him crazy with doonga doonga doonga, and just staying in C, and playing that. So playing a little piano was the first thing I did. And I don't play that great today, but enough maybe to write a song or something, But and then I played drums with a guy one time. It was just he and I think all we did was rumble and Johnny Be Good, and that was it. Yeah, that was it. And I sung at a band later on.
And was that mainly covers?
Yeah, playing in clubs and doing whatever was popular at the time. I think I even did Ahab the Arab. So.
Yeah. When did you start writing your first songs?
Well, a teacher in high school when I was a sophomore, Miss Reed, got me interested in writing some poetry, and I used to write every night before I'd go to bed. These poems. Not really thinking at the time. I'd kind of think of them as songs, and it would be like da 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 da. They'd all have this kind of rhythm, da 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 da, which is how you write a song, basically, And I had a song, which was one of the first ones I wrote, was "Lover Please," and the one that Clyde McPhatter did, but some friends of mine did that first. I'll tell you about that. But that was one of those things. Lover, please, please come back. Don't take the train coming down the track. Please don't leave me. Don't leave me in misery. If you look at that, and for a guy to get the first song he wrote, recorded, and then something like that happened, you think, wow, this is going to be easy, and it's not easy.
It's not, but
unless you're really gifted, someone like a Dylan or one of the Beatles or something, or Paul Simon, whatever.
And that song was, I guess, eventually your first big break in many ways.
Yeah. Some friends of mine, Merle and the Rhythm Steppers, I went with them to, I think it was Wickliffe, Kentucky. They were playing there with Bill Black's combo. And Bill was there. And Reggie Young was in the band. Satch Arnold, Bobby Emmons. Bill was playing bass that night, of course, I think. And who else? I was thinking it's somebody else, but that you would know. But we met Bill Black, and he liked him. And he said, I'd like to record you on. And, of course, they were thrilled. And the day that they were going to go down, they invited me. Hey, you want to ride along with us? They had a station wagon. So I did. And the session was done at Satellite Studios. And I'm talking about 61, something like that, 60, I think. And Chips Moman was the engineer.
Yeah, and that was kind of a precursor of Stax.
Yes. And still had the little record store on the side, if I remember right. But they did a song, and then Bill said, well, what else you got? And they said, well, that's it. But one of them said, but Billy writes songs. And I was drinking a Coke with my foot up against the wall, and Bill said, well, sing me some. So I sang him 3 songs. And Lover Please was one of them. So he said, let's do that. So they did it. And so that was Merle and the Rhythm Steppers. And my friend Jimmy Boyer was the one who told him that I wrote songs. And later on, when I'd had that success with I Can Help, he came and played drums with me on the road, which was great.
Was that your first time in a recording studio?
Yeah, it sure was.
And then the Clyde McPhatter had the first
well,
big
the
hit.
the next version, there was 2 versions before McPhatter. Bill did a track with this the guys he works with. He liked the song, I guess, so he did this track, and he had a friend of mine who I first sang the song to. His name was Dennis Turner, and he put Dennis on the track singing it. And that was released, and Shelby Singleton wanted to pick up the master and put it out on Smash. But Bill had a deal with London Records or something, distributing or whatever, and he didn't do it. So from what Shelby told me he was in New York recording McFadder. And he said, played it so, and he said he wasn't that fond of the song, you know. And he said, well, I tell you, Clyde, you do this one for me, and then I'll let you pick the next one, and then I'll pick one, then you pick one, you know. So that's it, you know. And I didn't even know he had recorded it until I was at this club one night, the Airline, and someone said, Swan, and have you heard your song by Clyde McFadder? I said, no. And John R. was playing it here, and we'd pick up that, you know. And so I listened to the show that night, and it was about 12:30 or something. And I was driving my little 49 Dodge or whatever it was I had then, and here it comes on the radio, and it's snowing. So I come to this four-way stop, Broadway and I forget it's cross street, where the Statue of Liberty is, small Statue of Liberty, and I just did a big old circle in the road, you know, with my car. Made me feel so good, and that was it. And the rest is history from there. And then I went to Memphis later on with the intent to write for Bill, you know. And saw him a couple times, and then, but the first place I went was Graceland, because I'd never been to Grace. I'd been down there before to actually go to see Jerry Lee and say hi to him, and but I'd never stopped at Graceland. So I went out there, and I got to talking to the guard, Travis Smith, and a real nice guy, you know, a great guy. And I told him what I was doing and all this. He said, well, one of my sons just got married, left home. We have a home, you can move in there. And they had another son, Bobby. And so I ended up staying there. And that was January of '63. And ended up living with him. And I didn't see Bill that much. I just ran around with the Smith boys, you know, going to the skating rink when those would go, and they'd take me with them, or the fairgrounds or movies, you know. And then when I turned 21, which was May of '63, I went back to Cape Girardeau, stayed there about 2 or 3 months, and in August I moved to Nashville, August of '63. And from then to now, here I am with you.
Yeah. At that time, were you already considering yourself a professional musician or songwriter?
No, far from it. I'd been down here a couple times to Cedarwood Music, but I just had made a decision later on. You know, I'm gonna go down there and sit. I just came down here and here we are.
Here we are. And some of the early recordings you made as an artist here in Nashville are kind of connected to what we're doing here too, because we're a creative workshop that's owned by Buzz Cason.
Right. Well,
and
Buzz was the first person to actually to do a record with me, I guess, was Mel Tillis and John Denny. They took me to Fame down to Rick Hall. We did 3 sides. Norbert was on bass, David, and
Jerry Kerrigan, maybe.
Jerry, I think, was playing, yeah. And then nothing happened. It almost got picked up by a guy at Capitol, this Nick Benet, who used to come to Nashville, but it didn't happen. He put horns on one song, actually, but it didn't happen. And the next time was Buzz and Chip Young produced me, which was 65, 66. and we did a song that Buzz and I wrote called Out of Her System. And then they recorded me again later, and we did Below Average Every Day Girl, which was a song I wrote.
Yeah, one of those 45s came out on the Rising Suns label, and the other one on Elf.
That's right. That was on that Bobby Russell song that he wrote. A couple songs he wrote that he had me sing, you know. And actually, we had another song that Buzz and Chip did on Rising Sun, which is Friendship. That was on Rising Sun. And Below Average Day Girl was Monument, and that first record was first song was Monument.
Yeah, you're just mentioning Monument, and both Monument and Combine Music and Fred Foster and Bob Beckham.
Yeah.
You were part of that generation of songwriters that eventually
was
just
great.
changed music around here. You and Donnie Fritts and Kris Kristofferson, Dennis Lindy, Arthur Alexander, Tony Joe White, and we'll get to all of that in a minute. But how did you get hooked up with the Monument Combine operation?
How did I get... Well, I used to see Bob a lot. I worked at CBS Studios for about a year, and then when I was at Cedarwood, and I wrote for Grady Martin and Floyd Kramer's company, and Kramart, and I was there for about a year and a half, and or a year, and then I'd walk over to Combine a lot and see Bob. And that's when, around 60, I'm trying to figure out my timeline here. But I was working for writing for Kramart Music, and I would walk next door at Combine, see Bob, you know. So every now and then I'd do that. And I'd be there on a Saturday by myself at Kramart, and I'd go outside. I'd see Bob's car or a Sunday, and so I'd go over there and we'd talk a lot. And he started playing these Tony Joe White demos that Tony was sending up from Corpus Christi. I think that's where it was from, sending from. And I told Bob, I said, man, if I'd ever produced or worked with anybody, I'd be the guy I'd like to work with, you know. And so Bob basically set that up.
And you guys did 3 albums together?
Yeah, 3. Yeah.
And I guess the first single that made an impact was Soul Francisco.
Soul Francisco, in France of all places, if I remember right. And then I think around San Francisco it probably did something. But yeah, and then they released Polk Salad, and that was out for I don't know how long before it took hold, you know. And yeah, it was fun working with Tony. He's a great guy.
And you guys are great musicians on that record. Some of them that got started in Muscle Shoals too.
Yes.
And Burke and
Norbert
White
and
did
David
some of the
and Jerry Kerrigan.
horns.
And then we went to Memphis, and did an album with Sammy Creason and Mike Utley. The guys that later became basically Dixie Flyers. And, you know,
Danny Freeman.
Yeah. And then back here, I think it was.
And I guess when you were working at CBS Studio, you ended that job, or you quit, and somebody else took over from you.
Yeah, you know, I'd been there almost a year, I guess, and I just tired of working, you know. So, and it was a great job. I loved it because I loved being at session. I used to hang out at the sessions in those days. Go over to Victor and hang out there while they recorded, and then I'd go over to CBS, you know. And so finally I hung out at CBS so much, playing ping pong with everybody and the musicians, and they gave me a job. And it was basically, they called it an engineer's assistant, but it's just like more of like a janitor, cleaning up between sessions and erasing tape, stuff like that. And so I was there for the Blonde on Blonde, first time Blonde on Blonde sessions that they did here. And then it wasn't long after that I quit. And a gentleman named Harold Hitt was the manager of the studio. And I just walked in and I said, Harold, I'm going to, I think I want to stop working for a while or something. And he said, no problem. He said, this will be your 2-week notice then. I said, oh, yeah, I didn't know anything about 2-week notices. But I said, okay, yeah, my 2-week notice. And he said, well, if you know of anybody that might be looking for a job, tell them to come in. I said, okay. So I left, and as I was going out the door, Kris was coming in. And the first thing out of his mouth was, hey, man, you know where I can get a job? I said, yeah, I just quit mine. Come on. And we went back to Harold Hitt's office, and I said, Harold, he's looking for a job, and that was it. And I left, and I guess they talked or whatever, and that was it. So Kris took my place, and I think he worked there about a year. And he and I went to Combine at about the same time.
And then Kris started his career as an artist, and when he was looking to put together a band, I guess mainly to play at the Troubadour in LA, he recruited you and I think Donnie Fritts and Dennis Lindy.
Well,
and a few other
how
people.
that happened was he walked into, I was sitting in Combine in Bob's office by myself, and he comes stomping in, and he's blah, blank, 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 blank. And I said, what's wrong? Well, so-and-so was going to help me at the Troubadour, and of course I was familiar with Kris's songs because I'd help him demo some there in the little studio and stuff. And he said they backed out and Dennis Lindy had started writing for Combine. And Dennis played everything, guitar, drums, bass, or whatever, And I said, well, look, why don't I'll play bass and get about the gig in California. I said, the bass is just top 4 strings of the guitar. I can play that and get Dennis Lindy played guitar. He said, great. And that was the beginning of that, And then when we went out, Donnie went with us because Donnie was there at Combine, And so Donnie was kind of our manager, that time. And then we worked there 2 weeks with Linda Ronstadt. Stone Ponies is what it was. Came back, and then Kris got a booking about 2 months later. Yeah, 2 months later, to work at the Troubadour in San Francisco. That's going to open a new one there. So that's when Dennis didn't want to go out anymore. So,
is that when you got Sal to play guitar?
He got.
Sal
he had met Zal Yanowski in New York, and so we met. Actually, we all met, and Donnie and I was out somewhere, and Kris called, and I was talking to him. I said, "Hey, I got us a piano player, man." He said, "Who?" I said, "Donnie Fritts." He says, "Great." So Donnie goes out with us, and he's the keyboard player, And Zal was the played guitar, and I want to say that Norman Blake was with us too, because the next gig after that was the Isle of Wight. We played there, and Norman was with us there.
Yeah.
As was Zolly,
And you didn't stay with Kris on the road for too long after that.
No, I was a very paranoid bass player, playing without a drummer, and after a while I got to be very paranoid about it. I don't know if it was in my head or their head or what, but about a year later I left, and Stephen Bruton came on as a guitar player, and the guitar player, who was a real bass player, Terry. Anyway, he started playing bass, and that was it.
And did you then play some with Kinky Friedman and Billy Joe Shaver?
Yeah, then I worked a year with Kinky, and which is quite an experience. And and Kink is a great guy, and all the guys in the band were great. But boy, we had a lot of neat experiences, you might imagine, you know.
Did you play bass with him as well?
Actually, I did, and rhythm guitar and singing harmony, you know. And then after that, I was talked to Bobby Bear. Wait a minute, and then after that, Billy Joe had an album coming out that Kris had produced, and Billy asked me if I'd go on the road with him and play bass, and he had a friend in Texas, George M. Jones, and George played guitar, and I did that for about 3 months, and Billy was writing for Bobby Bear, and Billy wouldn't do anything or something, and was talking to Bobby Bear about going to work with him, and that's when Kris called and said, "Hey, you want to come back?" You know, and it was perfect, because and Bobby said, "Hey, you should go with Kris. That's where you should be," you know, and I did, and I think that's about the time we recorded "I Can Help," which was in April of 74. Yeah.
And that was at Chip Young's studio?
At Chip Young's studio in Murfreesboro, yeah.
And the keyboard you played, the RMI keyboard, what was the...
Well, the RMI keyboard was a keyboard that Kris had given me for a wedding present. Actually, we were doing something one time. He said, "Hey, I want to get you something for your wedding. You know, what would you want? A wedding gift, you know." And we went to a music store, and I picked out the organ, and he got the amp to go with it, you know, which was, what kind of amp was that? It's cool. I still have that. I still have both of them, actually. But that's the one I wrote "I Can Help" on. But at the when we recorded it, so funny how things happen, you know. Bobby Emmons walked in that morning with a little organ over his shoulder. He says, "Man, you should hear this." Well, they set it up, and the first song we did was "I Can Help" that day, I think. And they set it up, and I was showing them the song, playing it, not wanting to play on the record, you know, or anything, because here Bobby Woods and Bobby Emmons are there, right? So I just started, I had that little boogie thing, you know, little lick, and I'm singing it, and I think Bobby Emmons said, "Well, you just go ahead and do it." So they set it up, and they ran it was a Wurlitzer organ, white, and it's about that long, about 3 feet long or something, and they ran it through a Leslie. They really gave it a little more of that vibrato sound, you know. And you know, and leave me in the studio playing and singing, standing up, and Reggie Young right behind me, you know. And while I'm doing the song, and we did it in like 2 takes, and but while I'm doing it, I'm standing there, you know, like this, playing it and shaking. "Yeah, you got a problem," you know. And Chip had a little puppy then, Bowser. And Bowser, all through the take, was pulling on my pants leg. And afterwards, you know, just Reggie went nuts. And it was pretty funny, you know, at the time. And so we gave Bowser credit on the album, you know.
And somebody else who, you know, helped make this record a great record is obviously one of the greatest guitar players.
Oh, Chip Young. And Reggie, actually.
And Reggie did that cool
Yes,
lick.
yes. And I loved it. And Chip did too, and said, "Hey, let's start the record with that," you know.
Do you remember if that was an overdub or if he actually played that?
That was right there, live.
And to this day, every guitar player is struggling to copy that lick.
Yeah, really.
So, you made a string of albums through the 70s for Monument, and I think
Yeah,
maybe
I
Epic.
did 4
A&M.
for Monument. One of them had the CBS label, and I went from Monument to what label was I on? Booker T produced the album.
Was that on A&M?
Huh?
Was that one on A&M?
A&M, yeah, that was it.
And
But
your 4th album that was titled 4 took you down to Muscle Shoals.
yeah, I went down there.
Do you remember any story or kind of how that?
Well, I really wasn't prepared for it, and it was. I really wasn't that together. Didn't have the songs, I don't think, and it's just something I wanted to do. Go down there and work with a guy. Hello, it's my telephone. Yeah. Guess who's calling? Donnie Fritts.
Funky Donnie Fritts.
Hello? Donnie, I'm doing an interview with Crazy Chester right now. And you're, yes, no, not was I am right now. Let me tell you something. Say hello to the audience.
Hello there, y'all.
Hey, Donnie.
Hey, how you doing?
Pretty good. How are you?
I didn't mean to interrupt your interview.
No, I'm glad you called. We were kind of thinking of something to talk about.
It's
Trying to think about something.
It's a perfect timing.
Perfect timing as usual.
Well, okay. I just,
What'd you do today? What'd you do? Did you work in the studio?
We're going to just go off on television. I mean, on radio.
Yeah.
Oh, I can edit it out. No,
He can edit it out. He can edit it out, but he won't. Well, that stuff you're doing, you've been in the studio, right?
I have been in the studio, and we're finishing up my album. And we're gonna put we put the Secret Sisters on the other day.
Oh, wow, cool.
And there's 2 more songs need voices, and I think we're going to use the sisters couldn't do it anymore because they're working on their stuff. But you remember Cindy and
Oh,
Marie?
yeah, absolutely.
They're going to do the other 2 songs next week.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
So I'll let y'all get back to you.
well, I'll call you later tonight.
All right. Bye, Andreas.
Okay.
Bye, Donnie.
Love you. Bye.
Bye. Love you. Bye. Bye.
Oh, that was nice.
Yeah. The fact that we were talking about Muscle Shoals and funk,
Yeah.
his ears might have been burning or something.
That must have been it.
Yeah.
But it was I love working with those guys. They are just incredible musicians, and that Muscle Shoals sound, just fantastic.
That album is one of my favorites of yours.
Wow, you know, it's hard me to listen to some things, because I wonder, well, why did I put that on there? Why did I do that? And of course, I'm sure a lot of artists do that, when you armchair quarterbacking yourself or whatever. Anyway.
Yeah, and you, after doing that string of solo albums, you also did some collaborative albums. You did an album that I really liked, the Black Tie album.
Oh yeah,
with Randy Meisner.
Yeah,
and Jimmy Griffin.
Yeah, and those are great guys, and
so by that time you moved out to LA.
I moved out, and which is when I did that A&M album, and which was one of the reasons I left Monument, because I was moving out there and everything seemed perfect. Chris was located out there, and I was on the road with him, and my wife really wanted. She was from out there, and she wanted to be back home. And hey, I'll do it. so or close to family.
Yeah.
You know.
And how did that Black Tie album come about?
I met this guy. His name's Reggie Young, and he had a studio at his house. And I went up there, and that's where I met Jimmy. And eventually Randy would hang out there. And a lot of that was cut before I got involved. Some of the instrumental stuff on there had Steve Bacaro and actually and on T-Bone's album Truth Decay. I think that's the first time I went up there. Yes, that's how I met Reggie. Was T-Bone was doing this album there. So, yeah. And then Jimmy would come in and Randy, and I'd go there and hang out during the day. And finally they said, well, why don't we do something with these cuts and make a band, call it Black Tie. And that's what he did, you know. And the fellow that produced it basically was a friend of Reggie's. His name's Rob Perkin, who lives in Connecticut. But Rob would be there, and he played some piano and stuff.
And one of the engineers who worked on that was Jeff Gillette.
The what?
Jeff
Jeff,
Gillette.
absolutely. Jeff was
I
there.
met him through another friend of mine, Charlie Taylor. He came out here to work on a project I was involved with.
Jeff's a great guy. Great guy, yep.
He sure is.
Yeah.
And then you did a second album with Randy and Charlie Rich Jr.
Yep. After we left I don't know how it was. We just got separated from Reggie in some way. And we were going out and working the road. And Jimmy moved to Nashville. And so I'd met Alan out there. And he and I and Randy got together and started going out. And it was Black Tie some. And then it was Meisner, Rich, and Swan, you know. And, yeah.
So we haven't talked as much about the songwriting side, and we certainly need to talk a little bit more about I Can Help, because you had a huge hit with it as an artist, but then it's also been recorded by a lot of people, including Elvis.
Oh yeah, that was an absolute thrill to have Elvis do it, and Jerry Lee did it. I mean, Jerry Lee. If you never heard his version, you should. I just think it's to me it's better than my record. I mean, it is fantastic, and
different other people record your songs too,
yeah,
including Waylon Jennings. And there's also one that I really like that maybe not that many people know that you wrote it. And when Stevie Ray Vaughan and his brother Jimmy did an album together shortly before Stevie Ray passed, they recorded one of your songs.
Well, I was working with T-Bone, got me involved in that. He was working on Great Balls of Fire, and I was in Memphis. T-Bone had me working with the actors, you know, and I was working with Dennis Quaid, close to him basically, and so I went to Jimmy Vaughan's room, and Jimmy was playing Roland James in the Great Balls of Fire. And we were just talking. He said his brother and he were going to do an album, and you got any songs or something, anything? I said, well, there's one, and I played him the White Boot song. And he liked it. And he said, I'll do that. And he did it. It surprised me. And I found out later when I was on the road with Kris, I got a phone call, and it was Jimmy saying, hey, we did your song. And anyway, and that was much later, but yeah, that was it's a good little song.
Absolutely.
You know? Good little song.
And so the Great Balls of Fire project was, connected to Sun, but then you also went back to the old Sun studio to cut a record.
Yeah,
that was titled like Elvis used to do.
Well, before that, I did an album. We called it Bop to Be, and had some songs I wrote on it, and then I got this idea later, maybe doing an Elvis album of Elvis songs, kind of arranging them a little different, like the "Don't Be Cruel" that I did with Chip, you know. And so I did do that, and that was fun. And I went, after we did that, I came up with this idea one time after that, thinking about of Sinatra. Sinatra. I said, well, I should do some of his songs. So I went back and I did a bunch of hit Sinatra songs, which was great doing that. And that's never been released. But hopefully soon some of that stuff will be coming out.
Yeah, and you also did an album paying tribute to Buddy Holly more recently here at Creative Workshop with Buzz Cason.
Yeah, absolutely, which I love doing. And
how did that one come about? What was that?
I think he and I both love Buddy Holly, and of course he was one of the Crickets one time, you know. And we talk a lot about Buddy Holly and doing something. I had a couple things that I put down at the house, and he liked them. And then we got together and worked on this song, "Thank You, Buddy," which is on the album, and came here, creative, and did some things, and that's it, you know. And that was fun. That was fun. I mean, I love Buddy Holly.
And the two of you been writing songs together too.
Yeah.
There's one on Buzz's latest album called Justice Gone, and then there's one called Whatever Happened to My Rock and Roll Dream.
Yeah,
you did
right.
not too long ago.
Did
And,
somebody do that? I don't think so.
You guys did a demo.
We did it, yeah.
And
We just did a demo, yeah.
yeah, I like that song though.
I do too.
And one project I wanted to ask you about, which I thought was, I'm curious about, is you were part of a stage production of As You Like It after the Shakespeare.
That's right.
Play,
Yeah.
and by Tony Richardson. How did that come about, and what exactly was your role?
Well, my wife had a friend, Buddy Ochoa, and he worked with Tony Richardson. And he had, I guess, told Tony about me, and they were doing this As You Like It play with Carol Channing and Bruce Davison. Is that it? Bruce Davison, actor. And had some great people in it. Some really good actors. And he wanted me to put music to the poems or songs in the play. So I did. And I think the play was one night or 2 nights, and was no more, but we rehearsed a long time. And quite an experience, you know, to do that.
Yeah. Your two daughters are both artists in their own right.
Planet and Sierra, both, they have recorded and made records and done a lot with different people, you know. So
that must make you very proud.
Oh, I'm very proud of them, and they still write and work on music. And Sierra worked with
Billy Corgan.
Yeah, the Pumpkins on a tour, and then she worked with is it Dave Stewart?
Yeah.
She worked with him, and they did a Ringo tour when he had that. I forget the name of the album. It was a good album.
Yeah.
But
that Dave Stewart produced on him.
Yeah, and but she went on a road with him, and she enjoyed that a lot. And then did a couple albums, you know. Did an album that was produced by Linda Perry. Yeah. Really a good album. It was on, what was that album that Jimmy Ivan had?
Interscope.
Interscope, yeah. So on Interscope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When they were little, were you encouraging them to pursue a
Not
life
that
in
much, but
music?
I'd find themselves in my studio doing something, you know, because when they'd sing at church, I'd make them little tracks. Just they liked Patsy Cline, so I made some tracks like you'd buy. What do they call them? Where you sing with them?
Karaoke type.
Karaoke type tracks. But I did them at the house, you know, and the keys that they sang in. Blue Moon of Kentucky and all of that stuff. But yeah, and then they just kind of got in it themselves, you know. And then now Sierra's living in Minneapolis. She married a gentleman from Minneapolis, and she and they both my daughters are big Prince fans. So she was excited about moving to Minneapolis because of that, you know. Oh, and they made the middle name of their daughter is Prince.
All right.
Lucille Prince.
And as a performer, you got to perform a lot of important festivals or events throughout the past 50 years. You mentioned the Isle of Wight.
Yeah.
With Kris. But there's another show that I think, especially looking back, was quite monumental, and that was the Havana Jam in '79.
Yeah,
which was also a great lineup, including Stephen Stills and Weather Report.
A lot of great jazz players. I mean, Billy Joel was there, and it was quite something.
And they made a documentary about that.
Yeah.
About that.
I haven't seen it
too.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I remember you not too long ago talking to the director of it. I guess he might be working on a reissue or something. I don't know.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, very nice fella. I forget his name. You remember?
Not from the top of my head.
He's very nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, for spending this past hour with me, sharing all your history. Do you feel we missed out on anything that's been important to you?
I can't think of anything. It was great when Carl Perkins came out there and did a few songs with us. That's one of the exciting things about working out at Chips. We got him. We did 3 songs with him, and one of them we were serious about putting it down, and then we just threw the others and just used them. Blue Suede Shoes and Matchbox.
Yeah.
I wish we'd spent more time on them, but it's hey, let's do Matchbox and Blue Suede Shoes and this and that.
And a little earlier you mentioned "Don't Be Cruel."
Yeah.
Too, which your version of that song has kind of found its cult following.
You know what was weird about that is when I was playing my guitar at the house one night and I was doing that
swampy
groove, and I started singing it, and then I was thinking, well, this is wild, is this good or what? And then when we did the album, and I don't really write all that much, and I really don't consider myself much of a songwriter like the prolific songwriters like Buzz or Kris or a lot of them, because I don't really write that much. I try at times, but it doesn't happen, And but was in the studio, and I said, well, I have this little idea for Don't Be Cruel, and so they said, we'll do it, and I was really embarrassed doing it for Reggie and them, and I started, and boy, they fell into it immediately, and it turned out to be a good little thing for us, because it does have a cult following, and they use it on TV shows every now and then on a funeral procession or something,
Yeah. And they put it on that country funk compilation too a few years ago. Lighting
which was cool.
Records.
There was a friend of ours. His name was Tom Baker. He was an actor. And Tom's not with us anymore, but met him around the time I first started. Kris was working, and he had a deal. He and some other people were, at that time, some of the actors on Saturday Night Live were sponsoring certain people to do little projects, film projects. And Tom did went to Memphis. And this was after Elvis had died and all. And he had he said, I want to use your version of that Don't Be Cruel on this little short movie I'm doing. And he did some shots outside sun, but all of a sudden he, in one scene, I think it starts out this way, of Graceland. You see Graceland and it's wintertime, kind of bleak looking, and then the Don't Be Cruel starts. And it goes real slowly across the front of Graceland. It's moved me quite a bit, I just still have it in my mind. And I hope someone can use that sometime doing that, because it really looks good,
Yeah. And a little earlier, we had a cameo by Donnie Fritts. And would you mind just talking a little bit about you guys' friendship? Because I know you guys are
Donnie,
best of
Donnie,
friends.
when I was at Cedarwood, I want to say, when he first came up here and started writing for Shelby Singleton's company, what was the name of it?
Was that Screen Gems?
Huh?
That was not Screen Gems.
No. We would see each other from a distance, but we finally met around the Combine era, coming in there, and came very close. He'd come up here and we'd stay up all night, 3 nights, whatever, and we'd be everywhere. Mostly at the Holiday Inn on the West End, or he'd come stay with me where I had the apartment on Broadway. And but we just, and then the thing with Tony, he was around all the time when I was working the Tony stuff in Memphis. We'd drive down together, and we drove to Texas, I think, once to see Tony just out of the blue. Well, let's go down. Tony's playing in Dallas, Texas, and we would see the show, and we came back, saw Tony. But crazy stuff, and I love him, and he's like a brother or something, But everybody feels that way about Donnie. I mean, everybody loves Donnie. He's a very special person in our lives.
Absolutely. My life, too.
Yes.
And over the last couple of years, you even had a couple occasions where you were able, the two of you, to reunite with Kris for certain special events. We just had celebrated Donnie's 75th birthday.
Yeah, that was great. That was great. Well, you were there. You were part of that,
Yeah.
and
It was real special to
fantastic
me
night.
because I've always heard you or Donnie talk about the good old days, but I never seen you perform with Kris. And to be able to do that, to see that for just one night, that was I felt myself transported back a little bit there for an evening.
Kris sounded great that night, didn't he? And
He sure did.
And that band, he loved that band too.
Yeah.
I mean,
And just
those,
so gracious of him just to come down to Muscle Shoals, just like that.
Donnie's birthday, and ask him to come. They didn't even think twice about it, So.
Yeah. So we're almost at the end. Maybe we can finish it off with what's ahead for you. What are you working on at the moment?
Well, for the last few years, I've been writing some spiritual songs. I guess gospel type songs. I don't know what you'd call them. And I've been working with Larry Rogers on it. You know Larry. And Larry got his start with Bill Black too. And but been working on that for 5 years, and hopefully that'll be out. I don't know when.
Well, thank you so much for spending your time with me and sharing all your stories. And I wish you just the best of luck for everything ahead.
Well, appreciate it so much. It's let's do it again sometime and try to get Donnie in here and Buzz, and
that sounds like a plan.
It would be. And
it's always interesting how, different people prompt different stories or different memories that otherwise you might not have on top of your mind. So,
all right.
Anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This was the 17th episode of the Crazy Chester Radio Hour. We taped it at Buzz Cason's Creative Workshop recording studio in Nashville. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed it. Until next week.